This photograph is famous. George Wallace took it up to Congress, waved it around among the congressmen, both the House of Representatives and the Senate, to prove that Highlander was a communist institution. And his proof was that man that you see in the left, in the left corner, kneeling over, his name is Abner Berry. And he just died a couple of years ago. I had a student who tracked him down and didn't find out much about him, unfortunately, because he was key to the whole myth that Highlander was communist. He had been a communist. Working for the Daily Worker, which was the communist newspaper. And he was planted there by the Georgia Commission of Education. He was sent to this meeting. The Georgia Commission of Education under Governor Griffith was strongly against desegregation, as all the governors were in the South. There was Governor Wallace of Alabama, and Governor Ross Burnett of Mississippi, Governor Faubus of Arkansas, and Griffith of Georgia, and of course Governor of South Carolina, North Carolina, everybody. And so they thought if they could pin the whole desegregation movement on Highlander, which had a reputation of being communistic, then they could say that the whole movement was communistic, and it was inspired by outside agitators and communists down from New York and so forth. And so they paid Abner Berry, we found this out afterwards, to come and be photographed as many times as he could with Martin Luther King. Now this was an important time, you see, this is 1957, and if you remember your history, the famous bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama, which really started the whole civil rights movement. So it started long before that, of course, with NAACP and the judgments in the Supreme Court and so forth. But really got the whole active movement going with Rosa Parks, who you remember refused to get up on the bus when she was told to move back in the bus, and started the whole movement of the bus boycott. Remember that took place in December 1956, and just before this, and it went on all the way through, and well, December 55 it was, because it went through 56, and Highlander had something to do with that too, and this is a history that is not so well known, that Rosa Parks, and there she is in the front row, you can see her over at the left, she's the farthest to the left sitting in the front row, came up to Highlander before she refused to get up on the bus. She came up to Highlander in the summer of 1955 at a workshop, a 2-week-long workshop on the Supreme Court decision, which took place in '54, you remember, on desegregation of all the schools in the South and in the country. And so she had come up as just a worker for the NAACP in Montgomery, Alabama. She had been the secretary in the NAACP. And she came up. She was very quiet, very shy. They said for 2 weeks they tried to get something out of her, to get her to speak, and she was so shy she wouldn't. And of course it was a really rare experience in 1955 to be together with whites on an equal basis. In other words, meeting with workshops, discussing problems, eating together, being in barracks together, and being in, this was the Highlander plan really, back in the, when they first got involved in the Civil Rights Movement in 1953, to bring people together on a totally equal basis, something that just wasn't happening anyplace else in the country, so that people stopped being black and white, they just became people. And if you've ever had that experience of being a 50-50 percentage white and black together, after about 2 or 3 days you don't know what color anybody is. They're just people, you know. And it's a wonderful experience. Well, Rosa Parks went home from that, and didn't plan anything. She didn't have anything in mind, really. There have been a couple other cases of people who refused to get up on the bus, but for one reason or another, they didn't bring trials or anything about it. In any case, just spontaneously, after that 2 weeks in Highlander where she didn't say anything, it finally clicked with her, and she just couldn't get up on that bus, and it started this whole movement. And she wasn't being glorious about it at all. She just said that she just couldn't do it after having had that experience in the first time in her life of being equal with whites and blacks. She couldn't go back to the old desegregated or the old segregated system. And she's come to Highlander many times since then, and I've talked to her about it, and she said without that experience at Highlander, she never would have had the courage to not get up on that bus.